If you're heading to an English medium university, there's one skill that's going to be your absolute key to unlocking academic success and, yeah, confidence. It's not really about debating or telling stories. It's all about clear, structured explanation. So today, let's break that skill down and really master it.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll talk about why this skill is so darn important. Then, we'll get into exactly what expository writing even is, break down its universal structure, look at some keys to success, and wrap up with a practical checklist you can use for your own assignments. Ready? Let's get started.
So let's kick things off with the absolute foundation. Look, getting this one type of writing down is, well, it's pretty much fundamental for the vast majority of your university coursework. Everything from your essays to your final exams.
Just think about it for a second. When you picture a university paper, what pops into your head? A lot of us, we think it's all about arguing your personal opinion, right? Or maybe telling a really compelling story. But actually, that's usually not the case.
The real answer for the vast majority of your assignments is something called expository writing. And honestly, getting a good grip on this is probably the single best thing you can do for your grades and, yeah, for your confidence too. It's basically the official language of university-level explanation.
Okay, so that naturally leads us to the big question. What is this thing, this expository writing? Let's define it and look at what makes it tick, just so we're all on the same page. So, at its very core, an expository essay is all about one thing, explaining. Its whole purpose is to inform, to clarify, or to describe a topic in a way that is super structured, super clear, and, this is the most important part, completely objective. You got to remember the key word here is explain, not persuade. That's a huge distinction, because in academic work, the goal is to build a shared understanding based on solid evidence, not to win some kind of debate.
So what does that actually look like? Well, think of it this way. You might be using it to inform your reader about a new topic, or maybe to clarify a really complex idea. You could be analyzing something, describing a process step by step, or just presenting a bunch of research you've done. But always objectively.
And when you look at its core characteristics, you can see how they all kind of fit together like puzzle pieces. It has to be objective, right? That's non-negotiable, because that's where your credibility comes from. It tells your professor you're working with facts, not just feelings. It needs a clear structure, a logical flow, and it has to be backed up by credible sources. You know, that focus on a clear, super predictable structure, that can be a massive help, especially if English isn't your first language.
All right, let's get into the how-to part, the really practical stuff. The good news is pretty much every expository essay, no matter the topic, follows the same universal blueprint. Once you know this structure, you've got a reliable map for almost any assignment you'll get. And you know what? That blueprint is surprisingly simple. It's that classic three-part structure we all learned at some point. You've got your introduction to set the stage, your body paragraphs where all the heavy lifting happens, and of course, the conclusion to wrap it all up nice and neat.
Okay, so let's break down the introduction. A really good one has three jobs. First, you give a little background, just to get the reader settled. Second, and this is the big one, you present a crystal clear thesis statement. We'll talk more about that in a sec. And third, you basically give a quick roadmap of the main points you're about to cover in the essay.
The body of the essay, that's the engine room. Now the rule here is super important. One paragraph, one single idea. That's it. You start off with a topic sentence stating that idea. Then you explain it, you back it up with evidence from your research, and then, this is the part that gets you the good grades, you analyze that evidence. You connect the dots for the reader and show you don't just see the evidence, you get what it means. And last but not least, the conclusion. Its main job is to circle back, summarize your key points, and really drive home that thesis statement. Now, the golden rule of conclusions is no new stuff. Don't introduce any new arguments or ideas here. You want to synthesize your points, show how they all connect together, not just list them out again.
Okay, so we've got the blueprint down. Now let's talk about some of the finer points, some keys to really making your essays shine. And these are especially helpful if you're studying in English as a second language.
All right, I cannot stress this enough. Your thesis statement is, without a doubt, the single most important sentence in your entire essay. When you have a clear, specific thesis, it's like sending a signal to your professor that says, hey, I get this, I've got a plan. It's the cornerstone of your academic credibility.
And just look at this comparison. It says it all. The weak thesis says pollution is a big problem. I mean, yeah, it's true, but it's so vague. It doesn't tell me anything. But look at the stronger one. It lays out exactly what the essay is going to explain.
3 specific contributors to urban air pollution. See the difference? That's your roadmap, all packed into one sentence. That is the goal.
So, besides a killer thesis, what else do you need? Well, you have to use transition words to connect your ideas smoothly, words like furthermore or in contrast. And you've got to weave in your evidence. Don't just quote drop and run away. You have to explain why that quote is important. And of course, keep the tone formal and academic. That means no slang, no informal language. You know the drill.
All right, we're almost there. For our last section, let's take everything we've talked about and turn it into a super practical tool you can use every single time. Think of this as your pre-flight checklist before you submit any paper. So right before you hit submit, just take a minute and ask yourself these questions. Okay, is my thesis clear and specific? Does every single paragraph stick to just one main idea? Have I actually backed up my claims with real academic evidence? Does it all flow logically? Is my tone right? And the big one, have I cited all my sources correctly? If you can take yes for all of those, you're in fantastic shape. And I just want to leave you with one final thought here. Because mastering this kind of essay, it's not just about learning a format. It's really about learning how to think like an academic. When you can take a complex idea and break it down with clarity, structure, and evidence, well, you're not just writing well anymore. You are demonstrating real, deep academic understanding.